On Okanagan Pioneers and Places, we take a look at two lawmen. Around the turn of the century, one, Constable Hugh Rose, found himself up against one of the most famous train robbers in the West, and his yearly logs take us to that moment in history. Almost 30 years later, the other, Police Chief David Murdoch, scandalized his town with his crimes. Today on Okanagan Pioneers and Places, we discover two very different lawmen. Welcome to Okanagan Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts with you today, and we have the curator of the Kelowna Museum with us as well, Ursula Surtees. We're going to talk about some bad guys today, two bad guys, but we're going to be able to do it for one of the bad guys through the eyes of a provincial police constable. Who is our constable, Ursula, and how do we know about him?
Well, he was the provincial constable. His name was Hugh Rose. We know about him because of necessity, he had to keep records, and we were fortunate enough to have donated to us about 10 of his weekly and yearly journals.
So these little diaries here, in the hand of Hugh Rose, tell the story, some of it kind of, not particularly interesting, and some of it very interesting. Where did these come from? Who was the guy who gave these to you?
Well, our old friend Mr. Bill Knowles brought them in, and he'd collected them and had them for some time, and he brought them in and he said, I think the museum is the place for this. And of course, when I started to open them up and started to read these little 1- and 2-liners that told so much, it became absolutely fascinating.
Right on. We've got a one that we can actually, just to give you an idea of the nature of the beast here. This is from 1901. John Bailey came and laid a complaint against Wild Alex for unlawfully letting hogs loose and damaging potatoes. Arrested Wild Alex at Cecil's house and brought him and Annie to Bailey's, where we stayed the night. That was on the 11th of March. On the 12th of March, just a day later, Bailey and I inspected the pits in the morning, held the trial on Alex, was sentenced by Dr. Sutherland to 3 months hard labor, 2 meals purchased, and he discharged. Justice came quick in those days.
Well, yeah, I was thinking if only it would move that quickly today.
So that's just a man, and he apparently had a lot of trouble with Wild Alex along the way.
Wild Alex's name appears with great regularity. I think he was the wild colonial boy in the true sense.
Yeah, and this one is a little more malevolent. This is from 1899. Alex took Marshall's bay horse with a white face and was riding the horse when the constable saw Alex near Marshall's. Heard Alex say he would shoot any constable coming to arrest him. Ordered suit from Matheson's, $27.
All in a day's work.
All in a day's work.
Yeah.
So this Rose was the constable in Kelowna for about how long?
Approximately a decade, maybe 11 years.
Yeah.
And he faithfully recorded everything. It's true, it's not in minute detail, but there's enough one-liners to give us a very good idea of what kept him busy, which was cattle rustling, horse stealing, dog poisoning, hold-ups.
I think I have a dog poisoning item here, as a matter of fact. Inquiries into poisoning. A dog arrived with sheep's head in mouth. Suspect sheep owner.
A very good deduction, I would say.
These people they pretty much knew their territory too, didn't they?
Oh, they did. It was a large territory but sparsely populated, and so quite often first names were used or just last names. It's very seldom that you see a complete name.
Yeah.
It's nearly always one or the other because everybody knew who everybody was. And for that reason, I think that there was this little network that Hugh had in place so that he could contact various people to see if they'd seen such and such a person, or seen such and such a horse, because the horses were almost as well known as the people.
Sure, it was horses and cattle where the big money was,
well,
but he also
absolutely.
broke up domestic disputes.
Oh, yes, yes, and also was kind enough to come to the rescue of a wife that was being beaten.
And paid for it with God abused himself for doing so.
He did indeed, yes. So,
now, his life became way more dramatic and, from our point of view, historically way more interesting in 1906.
Well, when I found that diary, I was extremely thrilled, because we hear a lot about cops and robbers, but it's very seldom that you get the first-hand look at what happened at this end, what actually happened in Kelowna that affected that particular incident. And there it was in the diary.
1906, Bill Miner, that famous train robber, robbed a train, and through the eyes of our own Constable Hugh Rose, we're going to take a look at that story one more time right after this break. Welcome back to Okanagan Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts with Ursula Surtees, curator of the Kelowna Centennial Museum. Bill Miner. What do we know about Bill Miner already?
Well, we know that he was very good at wearing two personas. One, he was out to do the robberies and all the things that we know him about, but he had a whole other character which took people in completely.
Now, first of all, let's take a look at the robbery, because he had his start and not a particularly successful start in the United States.
Well, when he was 17, I guess, he went to California. He'd heard all about the gold, and none of it seemed to come his way. So he thought, well, there must be another way, and that was when he took to holding up stagecoaches. He was incredibly successful and managed to hold up a number of stagecoaches before he was finally nabbed.
I mean, some huge amounts of money, too. So they quoted $75,000 in one robbery.
It's an amazing amount of money, and one can only assume that this was gold transported or money going into the payments, whatever reason. But he got this huge amounts of money and did it very successfully.
So he was successful in getting completing the robberies.
Oh, yes.
But not particularly successful in escaping with the cash.
Well, what happened was that he did quite well on his first few robberies, but then I guess perhaps complacency set in and he got caught. And off he went to San Quentin.
For a long time.
Well, no, the first time was a comparatively short duration, because he came out and decided that he'd been a lone wolf for a while, and so he took a partner. And the two of them robbed the stage, and Bill got away, and the partner got caught. And so Bill thought he'd try this again, so he took another partner. History repeated itself. The partner got caught, Bill got away. So then he thought he'd try it with three people. That time it didn't work. The San Quentin gates slammed on him, and he was in there for a good long time.
19 years, some odd.
19 years, yes.
Which led him to believe maybe the United States isn't a good place to ply this trade of mine. I'll do one more American robbery, and then I'm bugging out to Canada.
Well, this was true, but when he came out, he was 60 years old, and a lot of water had gone under the bridge, and a lot of stagecoaches had disappeared. And so what else is there around that's carrying money? Well, trains was the thing.
Trains are a good idea.
Right, so off we go, and we have the train robbery. And the train robbery was successful. They netted a fair amount of money. But by this time, it was getting a little hot for Bill on that side of the border. So he slid over to Canada, where things were a little bit more docile, took on his new persona of George Edwards, and took up residence in Aspen Grove, Merritt area.
So when we go over on the Okanagan Connector, Aspen Grove, right, you can take yourself back to the turn of the century when Bill Miner called that spot home.
That's right.
Only it was George Edwards. What kind of a guy was George Edwards?
Oh, well, he told stories to the kids, you know, about the good old days, and at a pinch he could give a sermon at church. When he danced with the ladies, very considerate. He always wore gloves so not to soil their dresses. And everybody felt that, he had a good steady income, and they felt that this was probably due to the fact that he was a very astute cattle raiser and just was a very good businessman. Nobody questioned his lifestyle, where he got his money, where he came from. He was George Edwards, a nice man, a contributor to the community.
But I guess, what, were the coffers running low or something? What's the scenario that took him back to his erstwhile life?
I think that within Bill there was this lust or longing for adventure. I think it became a bit tame for him.
And gosh, those trains were still carrying cash, and some of it's got my name on it.
Yeah, and so he thought, well, he'd have another go at this one, and it was on the Washington, BC border.
Sort of down in the Fraser Valley area.
Not exactly certain.
Yeah? It's that vague.
But in that general area.
So that's where he whetted his Canadian George teeth on this robbery.
Well, that's it. And so this is where we've got the first. But then he hightailed it back to Aspen Grove after he'd done his deed. And this time, he didn't feel quite as comfortable, I guess, because he decided that he was going to hold up another train.
Yeah.
This has always been a bit of a mystery. We're not sure whether he felt that the money he received on the first train, his share of it, was insufficient, or whether he just felt that, let's have one more go. But
let's have one more go.
Yeah, but whatever it was, he decided that he was going to try again, and he did.
Yeah.
But by this time, the descriptions of the perpetrators were well and truly out there, and this is where our Hugh Rose enters the picture.
In this diary, this is his diary dated, and he started this one on the 1st of May, little knowing that May was going to be a very important month. His entry for the May the 9th, the day after the robbery, description of train robbers. Number 1, about 5'6", young, clear, distinct voice, old, rugged, supposed to be dark, somewhat thin. Number 2, 40 to 50 years old, wearing old black suit and goggles. Number 3, spoke little, about 5'9", thin, wore a red mustache, and had a rough suit. All 3 men, shabbily dressed, wore slouch hats. $11,500 reward for robbers, $25 each for escapees.
Yes. That's a lot of money in those days.
How would he have gotten this information? Where would this information have come from the day after the robbery?
Well, there was, of course, communication. There was the telegraph, and so I'm sure that would have been used immediately. And there was some telephone communication up and down the valley, but mostly it would have come, I would think, by the telegraph and through the transportation system.
Now, what would Hugh Rose's first job be as soon as he got that telegraph?
Well, I should think that the first thing he would do was check to see how many able-bodied men he could recruit to carry out the orders of watching the trails and the creeks and generally keeping an eye open for suspicious characters and deploying them as best he could.
Because when you look at where Ducks was, at Monty Lake, which was where that train robbery occurred, the robbers had several options of how to get away.
Well, they did, and so it was a real chess game. You had to sort of try and figure out where the next move was going to be. And so he was instructed to go to Summerland with a posse because they thought they might come across over the hill from Chaperone and down to Summerland. It was also suggested that they might take off in other directions, and so he had some people from the reserve, Gaston and Kruger, were dispatched up to Trout Creek and all through that area. The posse went to Summerland. Constable Tooth, who was the local constable, was dispatched up Shingle Creek to keep an eye on what was happening up there. And one really quite a funny incident was of one little boy who complained bitterly. His riding mare, which was his first riding mare, was confiscated by his dad to go on the Bill Miner posse.
So this horse suddenly had a reputation.
Yes,
And
it did, yes.
Bill Miner, of course, is captured along with Dunn and Calhoun near Douglas Lake.
Yes.
So our man Rose, he had the periphery covered, but he wasn't involved in the exact capture.
No, but I think I can certainly say that he did his bit from the sheer physical discomfort. It rained. It rained constantly for about 3 days, and all of those poor posse people were out there, you know, just dripping with rain, chilled to the bone, and doing their duties. So finally they got the message that the capture had been achieved, and so they were packed off back from Summerland to Kelowna on the Aberdeen, where they were joined by the RCMP with 10 constables who had also been on the trail. So it was a very hot manhunt.
It was a hot manhunt, sure. And of course, the story about Bill Miner is that he, Dunn, and Calhoun were tried, convicted, jailed. He was eventually released, went back to the United States, where he died in a Georgia prison, I understand, about 1913.
Well, there's one thing you've got to say about him. He lived his life.
He lived his life.
Yes.
There's a story about another police officer in Kelowna, which is certainly not as noble a story, and we're going to tell that story right after this break. Hands up. That was how Bill Miner approached the various trains that he went on. A reason we come back to that is because this is actually Bill Miner's Colt revolver, peacemaker, or in his case, train robber. Where'd you get this from, Ursula?
This is courtesy of the Kamloops Museum as part of their collection.
Pretty neat gun. I mean, it's now been plugged and it doesn't operate at all, but it also has a little leather clasp right here, which maybe if he kept dropping it and he wanted it attached by chain to his person or something.
Well, it's a bit of a mystery. I'm not too sure what its function was, but it certainly seems to be part and parcel of it.
The original Bill Miner six-shooter. Who is the guy we're going to talk about in Kelowna now? He was the Kelowna police chief named David Murdoch.
Right, and we moved quite a long way. We're in 1932, and this is our own police chief. He's not a provincial policeman, and he has an assistant. His name's Archie MacDonald, and he also had a girlfriend by the name of Jean Nolan. And this is the little triangle that caused all the grief, because David Murdoch felt that Archie was cutting in on his time, and he didn't like this at all. And the next thing we know, he has decided that he's going to do something about this. So the chief, too, police chief, walks down to the Lakeview Hotel, where Jean Nolan was, and Jean is walking down the stairs, and he just ups with his gun and shoots her. And then, having done that, he just goes to Archie's house, and poor Archie is sitting in the kitchen peeling potatoes, and bang, got him too.
Kills Archie as well.
Yes, because he held him directly responsible for stealing away Jean's affections. He also had a neat little list of other people that he felt that the world could be better off without, including Dr. Boyce and a Mr. Gibb, and 2 or 3 other people, one of whom had upset him a little bit because at a previous occasion where he was showing signs of being just a wee bit unstable and had taken a 30-30 to a wrestling match, and this fellow removed it from him. And of course, when they found the list in the house, this name was up front on that.
So Murdoch was a murderous character.
He was. Well, he was unbalanced. I mean, this came out later.
Now, he went around, as you said, he had a list, and he was going actually around to these other people's places, but they had somehow been forewarned and so weren't there. How was he apprehended?
Well, in the most docile manner. He went home to make his supper, and his other assistant just arrested him.
Walked in and said, "Mr. Murdoch, I'm taking you into custody."
And that was that.
So he went to trial, obviously.
Oh, yes, he went to trial. And I guess people realized that certainly he'd done this, but how competent was he? And so he had 2 trials, both with a hung jury. And then he had a third trial in which he was found not guilty by reason of insanity.
So what happened to Mr.
Well, he
David
was sent to a
Murdoch?
sanitarium, and he'd only been there a couple of years, and one of the a politician who was very interested in trying to change conditions of sanitariums became interested in his case, worked very hard to see if he could get Murdoch released. He was unsuccessful, and Murdoch stayed in. And David Murdoch also, for some peculiar reason, felt that maybe if he'd explained to the jury that this might be something that would help, and he wanted to explain to the jury why he had done this. But the jury really didn't want to meet with him again. They felt that they had been as humane as they could, and that was that. They'd done their duty, that was it.
Well, what did he want to say to the jury? What?
Well, I think he wanted to apologize or to explain or to somehow validate. Here again shows a real kinky mind, because after all, he was the one at fault, not the jury, so why should they have to go through that again?
So do we know what happened to Murdoch? Did he?
No, as a matter of fact, we don't know. We've tried to find out. The records of what actually happened to him are a bit of a mystery. We don't know whether he was released, whether he served his full time, whether he was considered recovered and was sent back to society. We truly have no idea what happened to David Murdoch.
So there is another chapter.
There's
at least
chapter.
an epilogue to be written.
There is indeed, and I'd like to see that wrapped up. It's one of those things that you always wonder about.
It's the historian in you, isn't it? This
Oh,
is
indeed.
not complete yet.
Not yet.
Interesting. So here we have our Constable Hugh Rose, the BC Provincial Police Constable, established in Kelowna, involved in the hunt for the great train robber Bill Miner. And we also have the story of David Murdoch, the police chief of the city of Kelowna, with murderous intent dispatching his lover and the person he thought was cutting his grass. Thanks for watching Okanagan Pioneers and Places. We'll be back next time with more interesting stories from the region.